Rightio. Let's see if this whole Anunnaki thing has any cred.
If you don't know who Zecharia Sitchin is, he was an executive of a shipping company who was also an ancient history buff, and he wrote several books from the 70s to the early 2000s, in which he propagated the theory that human civilization was created by ancient astronauts. Degree in London, and then became the head of a shipping company. So he's not like a trained Sumerologist. He didn't actually professionally study any of the stuff he's talking about in his books. But, he was an amateur who's interested in the subject, and I think that that's great. As far as his Sumerian, he taught himself. But when you teach yourself, okay, sometimes you don't always know what you're supposed to study, okay? So personally, looking at his translations and things like that, I think he kind of did a half-assed job of teaching himself, because he doesn't take certain things into account that you would want to take into account when you're studying Sumerian. For example, we actually have dictionaries from ancient Mesopotamia. The ancient Mesopotamian scribes created dictionaries. Now, they have all kinds of lexical lists. That's just sometimes groupings of common words in their language, but some of them have an inventory of the word meanings, right? And it tells you in the languages that they used what the words meant. And he doesn't seem to avail himself of that information when he makes his translations. Like, for example, when he translated the word Anunnaki, right? Now, what did I told you that the word means of royal seed, okay? But he translates it to mean from heaven to earth came, right? Breaking down Anunnaki into components, and basically I think he just broke them into components, opened up a Sumerian dictionary, and then looked for those words, not really understanding the grammar of words or anything like that. So Anu, I think he says, means the heaven, right? Which is the god Anu, who represents the sky. And Ki is the word for earth, representing the earth. And then Na he interprets as coming, to come. So heaven came to earth, something like that. But he's just like breaking it up into parts based on just whatever, he wanted, and then looking up the individual words in the dictionary and then saying it means that without understanding how it was formed, or even understanding that the word Anunnaki isn't the original word, that Anunnaki is just an Akkadian translation of Anuna, and it's Anuna that he's supposed to be looking at. Anunnaki actually isn't Sumerian at all. It's Akkadian. And Anuna is Sumerian. But yeah, so a solar system sits between the heads of the king and his servant.
I mean, just look at this for yourself. What do you see there? I mean, how could they possibly have known about planets rotating around the sun 6,000 years ago?
I think he means revolving around the sun. But yes, look at this for yourself. What about this image is showing revolution or rotation or motion of any kind? Now, I do realize that pictures don't move, but if Bright is going to assert that the picture is depicting motion, there has to be something in the picture to indicate that, lines or something. Otherwise, you can't make the assertion that it is depicting motion. But maybe he simply misspoke and means only that the image is depicting the solar system. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt on that point. In order to verify this conclusion, what would we need? Well, more images like it for comparison would help. That star in the middle is seen on other seals and works of art. Images of stars are fairly common in Sumerian art, though I think you could have figured out it was a star on your own. Bright, however, does not think it is a mere star, but is in fact the sun. Now you might say, well, the sun is a star. But you see, the Sumerians' terminology does not correspond to ours. Their word mul, kakabu in Akkadian, which is usually translated into English as star, applied to all shining objects in the sky. except for the sun and the moon. It was a generic term, even used for planets. They were bright, shiny objects up there, too. It was also used for whole constellations. A different word, Udu Idim, Bibu in Akkadian, was used for the sun, moon, and known planets. The term usually gets translated into English as planet, but as you can see, since it was applied also to the sun, it's not a precise translation. My point is that they put the sun in a different category than stars. And in their art, they used a different symbol for the sun than they used for the stars. They differentiated between them. This is the symbol they used for the sun, and these are the symbols they used for stars. There are a variety of forms for the stars, but only one for the sun. So whenever you're looking at Mesopotamian images and you see this one, you now know you're looking at the sun. And when you see this image, you know that you're looking at a star. So the image on Ili Ilat's seal is easily identifiable as a star and not the sun. The fact that there is no sun in this image alone demonstrates that it is not depicting the solar system. But you see, Bright is using the "it looks like it, therefore it is" method of interpretation, and he continues to run with it. There's a problem with that approach. It leaves us susceptible to the very common tendency to associate images with things that we ourselves are familiar with, rather than what the people who made it were familiar with. No image from any culture should be studied in isolation or from our own biased perspective. It should be compared to other images that culture has left us so that we can see it in context. Wouldn't you say that makes sense? Wouldn't you agree that trying to interpret an image all by itself without researching the beliefs of the people who created it, not to mention their artistic styles, techniques, and motifs, would lead to wrong conclusions? His reason for bringing all these things up is to prepare you for what he is about to say. He wants to establish the Sumerians as an advanced society, so that it will be easier for you to accept his propositions about certain knowledge they had, which is not generally accepted by historians. I should point out that just because there are certain customs that we possess today that originated with the Sumerians, all that means is that they were the first to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were in some way amazingly superior to other cultures. It just means that they were influential. Influential is not the same as scientifically advanced. The Sumerians were backward and ignorant in many respects too. Anyway, Bright begins by suggesting that the knowledge they possessed was not acquired on their own, but was given to them. I think he's bringing this up so that he can nip in the bud the objection that the Sumerians didn't have telescopes.
But where this gets really interesting is that in these stone and clay tablets, they give credit to all their knowledge not to any king or inventor, but they say that all the knowledge was given to them by other beings, the Anunnaki, which means from heaven to earth came.
While it is true that the Sumerians gave credit to the gods for much of the knowledge and technology that their own ancestors acquired, much of their so-called knowledge was simply wrong. Take a look at their scientific and medical texts and you'll see what I mean. The Sumerians said that their gods caused all natural phenomena as well. Does Bright believe them when they say that weather is caused by the gods? Also, giving credit to the gods is nothing unique or unusual. Most ancient cultures around the world gave credit to their gods for everything, even their morality and laws. That's standard. And as you would expect, these societies have different ideas, which often conflict with one another, so they can't all be right about where their ideas came from. In these stories, the Sumerians give credit to the gods, but by their individual names. There's no Sumerian document, to my knowledge, in which the Sumerians say that all knowledge was given to them by the, quote, Anunnaki, unquote. If Bright can produce such a document and show it to us, I will retract that statement. But I don't think he can, because the Anunnaki are known mostly from Akkadian rather than Sumerian texts. They were a specific group of gods, the old deities associated with fate, fertility, and the underworld, headed by the god Anu. In fact, they are said to reside in the lower earth. Another group of gods they often are paired with are the Igigi, who are the younger generation of gods headed by Enlil, who reside in the heavens. Nevertheless, I grant him that while the name Anunnaki is Akkadian, it probably has Sumerian origins. After all, this group of gods is more commonly called by its Sumerian name, the Anunna. By the way, the term Anunnaki does not mean from heaven to earth came. That's a folk etymology invented by someone who doesn't know the languages very well. The word probably means those of princely seed. To date, no images of the Anunna as a group have been found. So if you ever see anyone pointing to images and saying, these are the Anunna or these are the Anunnaki, they are either misinformed or are making it up.
So let's discuss.
They knew of only 5 total planets and no more, the ones visible to the human eye without a telescope. Their 7-day week was based on the 7 Udu Idim. We have, for example, a Mesopotamian astronomical text called the Mul Apin, which has its origins in the Middle Babylonian period, and it makes it quite clear that there are 7 and only 7 Udu Idim, and they are named the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So since the Sumerians only knew of 5 planets, then the dots on Ili-Ilat's seal, which amount to 11, cannot represent the planets. When the Mesopotamians speak of what is in the heavens, they always describe the objects from the point of view of someone standing on the earth, and not from a location within the heavens. We thus should be interpreting this image from that same earthly perspective. That means that none of the circles in the image could possibly be the earth, because they're standing on it. And Sitchin's word meanings and translations of Sumerian and Mesopotamian words are not consistent with the Mesopotamian bilingual dictionaries produced by Akkadian scribes. The Akkadian scribes are saying, here's a word, what it means in Sumerian, and here's an Akkadian word for it, and so on. He doesn't use that. If he talks about a word meaning whatever in Sumerian, and it never shows up in that language with that meaning, then he's probably wrong. In other words, he gives meanings sometimes to words, not in the case of Anunnaki, but sometimes he gives meanings to words that aren't even a meaning that you can find in any of the dictionaries, right? So that's why I would say he's a bit untrustworthy in that regard. Nonchalantly. Bright summarizes Heiser's argument to be that since the seal doesn't say anything about stars or planets, then the image is not the solar system. Is that an accurate assessment of Heiser's paper? Well, at the beginning of his paper, Heiser summarizes his argument in 4 points. Bright only tells you what the first point is, and he leaves out the other 3. For what reason, I don't know. You'll have to ask Bright. Heiser's second point is what I've mentioned already, that the Sumerians did not draw the sun that way. We've seen that he's correct on that point. His third point is that the dots in the image are stars, not planets. And to be fair, Bright does mention that scholars believe the dots are stars, but Bright's refutation of this point of view is simply, God, just look at this and think for yourself. So again, he appeals to the "it looks like it, therefore it is" argument, not considering the fact that it looks like a solar system only to us, and it wouldn't have to anyone living back then. Take note, the Sumerians drew the stars as circles sometimes. They drew stars this way, this way, this way, and this way. So yes, it is a perfectly rational conclusion that these are stars. But you might reasonably ask, if in this image they are all stars, why did they draw one star different from all the rest? A reasonable answer is that they wish to give prominence to the one star over the others. You see, Mesopotamian astronomical texts divide the sky, the lower heavens, into 3 bands that stretch from east to west, each band named for a god: the path of Enlil, the path of Anu, and the path of Ea. In each path are 12 month stars. Each month, one of those month stars takes prominence through a heliacal rising, or star rise. This occurs once a year when the star briefly becomes visible above the eastern horizon at dawn, just before sunrise. Note that there are exactly 12 stars in this image. So, what we are probably seeing here are 12 month stars, with one of them rising, taking prominence over the others.
What is that? And this creates all kinds of other speculation, because it's like, wait, are there 11 planets? And So, okay, is Pluto a planet? Like, give me a break. What a stupid discussion that is. Some scientists that want to redefine things. Who cares how far away it is or how small it is? Like, grow up.
Well, now wait a minute. This is a strange attitude. Scientists are the ones who defined Pluto as a planet in the first place. You would never even have thought of Pluto as a planet if it weren't for the scientists. And the whole planet category is of their own creation. They are the ones who decide what a planet is because they came up with the concept of a planet. And if you're against scientists ever correcting themselves, well, there goes science. Still, all that is irrelevant. What would matter here is not what scientists think anyway. It would be what the Sumerians thought, or what the gods of the Sumerians thought if we're to believe what Bright is telling us.
But this raises other questions too about the asteroid belt. I've discussed this in other videos. It's clearly that was a planet or a massive moon or something. Something collided. Scientists will say it happened millions of years ago, but they clearly don't have enough variables to make that conclusion. I mean, you would need to know the size of these objects. You'd need to know the direction as well as speed of the collision. So they can't state how long ago that was.
So Bright is saying here that he believes scientists when they say that a planet used to be where the asteroid belt was, but that he doesn't believe scientists when they say that planet was destroyed millions of years ago. To be clear, scientists now say that there were several minor planets there which were destroyed millions of years ago. Apparently Bright thinks one major planet was still in existence there when this cylinder seal was made some 4,500 years ago. He doesn't give us any scientific evidence for this, so why should we believe him?
But when you look at these tablets, is it possible that this could be communicating the so-called ninth planet that they know exists? All the data proves that this massive ninth planet, 4 or 5 times the mass of Earth itself, was creating a tilt in Neptune and Uranus, and that's how they discovered it. Well, they haven't discovered it. They're looking for it. It's obviously incredibly far away, and my guess is that it probably has a completely different orbit altogether. But they know it's out there. And yet, here's this tablet from 6,000 years ago that shows these things. And by the way, Zecharia Sitchin is the one that was saying that there was another planet out there, and here it was validated 40 years later. That's interesting.
We have here a situation where the cylinder seal appears to depict 11 planets, and yet there are currently only 8 planets with a possible 9th. So Bright has to go through all these contortions talking about how Pluto is a planet, but the other objects in the solar system are not, and then the asteroid belt, there was only one planet there. It's like he's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. So, again, we have an argument being made that the Sumerians had advanced knowledge, but that knowledge cannot be validated. If it doesn't match our current knowledge, then how, I ask you, can we know it's true? The only way we could demonstrate that the Sumerians knew about the solar system is if they depicted a solar system that we ourselves could verify. He's arguing that the Sumerians knew about something that we, to this day, still don't know to be true. This is an unfalsifiable claim. You can't prove it wrong, therefore it's right. Anyway, as I have already demonstrated, the image cannot possibly be the solar system because we have written documentation proving that the Sumerians knew of only 5 planets, did not have any conception of a heliocentric solar system, believed the Earth was flat, did not depict the sun this way, and believed the stars and planets were on this side of a heavenly ocean. Any one of these on its own would thoroughly disprove the solar system hypothesis.
But these
Well, there we go. What do you reckon? Please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help us out. Cheers, and catch you later.